Hello, this is Jesse Rodriguez Melendez from All Bases Covered, and welcome to Spanglish World Networks on Zingo TV channels 241, 250, and 251. Please remember to download both the Zingo TV app on the respective app stores on iOS and Android devices. While you download, make sure to rate and leave a comment. The app is free. Zingo TV is also available on Google Chromecast, Amazon Fire and Fire TV sticks, Roku and Roku sticks, and also on all TVs 2016 and forward. Welcome to this week's edition of All Bases Covered. I am super excited to bring on my special guest once again for part two of this very interesting conversation that we started last Wednesday with Mr. Ray Negron, who is a New York executive, a New York Yankees executive. He's an author, he's an actor, he's a producer, the man does it all. But more importantly, and what I love about this man is what he does for the youth and what he does for humankind, for people. He's just genuinely a wonderful, wonderful human being. And so please help me welcome Mr. Ray Negron back to All Bases Covered.
What's going on,
Ray,
Jesse?
Thank you for coming back on with me today.
My pleasure.
So we started this great conversation last week, and you were so kind to tell your story, how you had gotten connected with the Yankees. For those of you that didn't watch or haven't watched last week's show, Ray shared how he was discovered being naughty at Yankee Stadium. How old were you, Ray, when that actually occurred?
1973.
17 years old. I wasn't even born yet.
Hey, watch your mouth.
Well, I was, but I was probably like two. um, but yeah, it's one of those stories that you hear and that you just know that God had very special intentions with you. What do you feel that intention was, now that you're at this age and you can sort of look back and know what happened and see your life? What do you truly feel that intention was for?
Well, let me just remember, Jesse, I've told you this before, and I tell many people this before. There had to have been a reason, because in my house there were 6 boys.
Hmm.
And of the 6 boys, I'm the only one that didn't go to prison. Of the 6 boys, I'm the only one that's alive. And of the 6 boys, I was the one that was caught and taken into Yankee Stadium to work for George Steinbrenner, because he wanted to prove a point that if we do the right thing by someone like me at the time, we can save a life. And he saved a life. And it's just that he said, like he used to say to me, don't you F me, don't you F me,
Hmm.
because he wanted me to go in the right path. And he always wanted to know. He was really proud of the fact that I was able to do something with my life besides just have a menial job at Yankee Stadium. You know what I'm saying? He wanted to see, what could I do with it? What can I, in essence, what was my contribution to the world? You know what I'm saying? And that's something that meant something to him. And because it meant something to him, it meant the world to me, because it showed me that he cared in a world where nobody cared. You understand what I'm saying?
Yeah, and indirectly, by touching your life, he really indirectly touched the many, many thousands of people you've now touched, right? Because of
And you know what, Jesse? And he knew that without saying it, he knew it. And I know that he knew it. You know how, Jesse?
mm,
Because one time when I knew that the end was near, in my own way, I mean, I always thanked him, but I wanted to thank him from the heart.
hmm
And so I know it was just me and him sitting in his office. And sometimes when I wanted to have a deep conversation with him, whereas no one could hear us, I used to go by his desk. He would be sitting at his desk, and I would literally go on my knee and lean on his desk and just stare at him and talk, and he would let me talk and express myself. And
Mm,
I remember this one day I said, "Look," without him realizing that I knew that the ending was coming.
mhm,
And I said to him, I just wanted to let you know that all these years, you know how much I appreciate what you did for me. I need to always thank you," I said to him. And he says, "You don't need to thank me because you don't understand. You have no clue that the day that I first met you and I looked into your eyes, I knew that your story was already told."
mm. I love that.
How heavy is that, Jesse?
So special. And
Yeah.
what a special moment to
Oh, no, it's special. It's special forever.
yeah.
And I'll never forget that when my first book came out and it became a New York Times bestseller, when I had been on my book tour, and then when I got back to Florida, there
Mm,
was a letter there, and when I opened it and I read it, I was crying like a baby because he said in the letter, "All my world championships don't mean what you have done. What you have done means more to me than all the world championships I
mm.
have won." And you know what? And I have that letter hanging on my wall, and
Wow, that's
it's
awesome.
my most prized possession.
Yeah. Now, again, Georgetown, I want people to understand that, on the exterior, I remember, I think I shared with you, Stanley K was a patient in an office that I worked at many, many, many years ago.
Right.
Stanley K was George Steinbrenner's friend,
Real good friends.
very good friend. And he used to come in and he would, tell all these great stories about work he was doing. He was a musical composer, I
Right.
understand.
He was great in the show business. Big
Yeah.
in Broadway. Big on Broadway.
And I remember one day I said, and this was way before I even knew that I would be involved in the world of sports. And I remember saying to him, "Man, he looks like he's so tough. Like he looks like a tough man." He said, "That's the George Steinbrenner the real George Steinbrenner, the man I know is got the best heart anyone could ever imagine." And I always kept that dear. And then I met you, and we started the academy, ended up meeting you, and I felt connected, honestly, to the Yankees in a big way, on a bigger scale the day that I did meet you, because I said, "This is a man that literally sat, spoke, spent time, got to, experience with the boss." And to me, George Steinbrenner, he was my business idol. After I got to know who he was and the things he had done for the world of baseball, I truly loved him, because of what he had done for the Yankees, but more so because I knew who he was more as a man, as a father, as a business person. And the first day I met Hank, Tony says to Hank, "Your father is her business idol." And he says, "My dad was an incredible father. He was an incredible, business person, but he was a MFer as a boss. He was tough."
Hmm.
And I said to him, "In this type of business, it's required. You need that." I also remember you telling me all these amazing stories about things that he would do in the community. What's one of them that you can share? There's one in particular that I remember. Let me see if you share the same one, but one that really touched me deeply. So what's a story you can share about
No, you tell that
that?
story first.
Okay, so I remember asking you one day, what's a memory, Ray, that you have, of George Steinbrenner and the things that he had done? And I honestly thought you were going to say something about the Yankees or the way he would sort of plan for winning, because I know he loved to win. And you said he would sometimes tell me, "Come on, Ray, we're going out," and he would grab you and you would go and knock on community doors. And I was so fascinated by that thought because I said, "Wow," to know that on the exterior, he had this rough and tough demeanor, yet he always, it seemed to me from the stories that I hear, always had people at the forefront of his heart, always wanted to do good for people and for mankind. And so I don't know what other one can you share that's like that?
Well, like he knew how the Latin people. Listen, we're in the South Bronx. Let's face the facts.
Right,
Okay, so what's in the South Bronx? Latinos, Dominicans, Puerto Ricans, you name it.
right,
So and he knew that. He's no dummy. He knew what demographics of everything because that's a business.
right.
And I love the aspect of him going to a Dominican restaurant unannounced, and we would sit on the table, and next thing you know, everybody is like, hey, the whole block is going crazy because George Steinbrenner is in the corner restaurant. Okay, and the restaurant owners from other places would run over would
So
run
he was part of
over
the
and say,
ruckus.
you know what I'm saying? And please, Ray, bring them to my place, please. That kind of. It was beautiful to see him at El Nuevo Caridad and
Uh,
eating rice and beans and
he likes Spanish food, Ray?
he, he liked it. I mean, was it his favorite? It wasn't his favorite, but
Okay,
he was there more so for the people. He wanted
right.
to let the people know that, hey, man, I am not good enough that I can't come here.
I love that. Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? And it was just to put him in a different state of mind as opposed to, like, if he was fighting with Billy Martin and he was like into that rage, at least driving through the neighborhood would make him understand and put things into perspective, because the first time that he did that with me, we're driving through Westchester Avenue. Okay, he wanted to see where I was born and where I lived, so I took 161st Street and Westchester Avenue, Hunts Point, right?
Mm. Yeah,
and and
as
and, I,
Bronx as it gets.
and at that time it was, Jesus, can people live like this? And I said, what are you talking about? I live like this. And he looked at me and he was like, oh my God, and it was a wake-up call.
Mm.
You understand?
But
It was a wake-up call. And it was the aspect of, I'll never forget driving back. He stopped. We stopped. He got out of the car and was talking to the people. I mean, this is during the period where the Bronx is burning, but
mm,
hey, in his mind, I'm burning more, so I can come out of anywhere and talk to the people. I remember this one guy in particular. He's talking to him. What do you think we should do at Yankee Stadium to help the people more? And the guys, what do you call it, gave him some advice. George took it, and then he was giving the guy a $50 bill. The guy didn't want to take it, and he said, "No, no, no. You earned this because you're a consultant to me today."
oh,
And
wow.
you know what I'm saying? And it was very cool. And during that World Series, he had a little Puerto Rican kid throw out the first pitch,
Really?
and people forget that.
Do you remember that kid's name?
No, no,
Would be interesting to find him,
I
huh?
know, I know.
That would be cool.
When they did the movie The Bronx is Burning, they show it.
Really? That's
Yes,
awesome. Maybe we could do some digging on that, find that. I'd love to have that kid on. That would be
right.
amazing.
I mean, the
Uh,
kid, the kid was probably 6 or 7, so he wouldn't even remember.
awesome. Oh my gosh.
Yeah,
That is so cool.
yeah.
So I remember then you introducing and bringing Dwight Gooden over,
Hmm.
and I got to sit with Dwight and ask him some questions. And in one of those, I asked him that question. I said, what's one of your memories of George Steinbrenner?" And he said, "Well, I'll tell you a really cool story. He was on a flight to Tampa once, and he was sitting, obviously first class, and George Steinbrenner walks in and doesn't see Dwight and takes his seat and then a woman with with a child in a stroller and, walks in, she's challenged, she's trying to get it, get the baby, the stroller, everything into the airplane. And George Steinbrenner stopped her and asked her where she was seated. And she said, "Oh, I'm seated in the back." He said, "Well, you take my seat and I'll go take your seat." And so Dwight's watching the whole thing go on. And then they arrive in Tampa. So obviously Dwight gets out first. And then George Steinbrenner comes out. And Jo Dwight then sees him, says, "Hey, George, nice to see you." They catch up, they start talking, and then Dwight says to George Steinbrenner, "I saw what you did back there. That was really a nice thing." And he said, "What are you talking about?" He said that, "I see what you did with the woman." And he said to Dwight Gooden, he pointed at him and said, "You never saw that," and
You
walked
saw
away.
nothing.
You saw nothing. Um,
He walked away.
he walked away from Dwight. Dwight said
Yeah.
he stood standing there like, what just happened?"
Yeah. What did I do wrong? Yeah.
Yeah, I love that story. I was so fascinated by
Yeah.
that. I'm like, "That's great."
Years later, when we got together with the boss and Dwight for the first time, when he was negotiating that his contract for the first time to join the Yankees in '96,
Uh-huh.
Dwight brought that up again, and Steinbrenner said, "Oh, shut the fuck." Oh, excuse me, I can't curse, but I'm just letting you know what he said to him.
Yeah, 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 yeah.
You know.
As a businessman, as someone that you watched, again, being in the world of sports and being the owner of the best franchise in all of sports, in my
Right.
opinion,
Right.
what were some of the things that he absolutely would not negotiate on?
I don't think that ever happened because he would negotiate on anything, and not all bets are off because if there's something that was good or right for the Yankees, but there may have been like an entanglement. Like the
Mm,
perfect example is Dwight Gooden.
mm,
Everybody told the boss, "Do not sign this guy. He's a drug addict. He's a junkie. He's gonna let you down." And the boss said, "Thank you for your advice.
mm.
I will sleep on it." And and the next thing you know, he was signing Dwight. He negotiated the deal himself because his own people didn't believe in Dwight.
Wow, that's awesome.
Hmm.
Yeah, and again, but you see, I think that that was what made George Steinbrenner so special, was that he stood his ground, really understood what he wanted for his organization, and I like that he, really, really pushed the envelope. I like that. I like that he was a man that stood for what he truly did believe in,
Hmm.
and more importantly, that he really, showed what stepping out of your comfort zone can do for other people. I love that. Um, what do you think his opinion would be right now of how the organization is going or has been run? Because I know it's still family owned, right?
Yeah. It's a hard question because and the whole world of analytics and everything like that.
Right.
See, but people don't understand that George Steinbrenner was dealing with analytics back in the '70s. Okay, he was trying to make me go back to school to work to learn the aspect of numbers and all that kind of stuff to use it in baseball records, etc., what have you.
Mm,
And I actually signed and did 1 week at St. John's University in that particular subject matter. And after a week, I just said, "This isn't for me. This is not." And I was gone, even though they paid the tab. Billy Martin and George Steinbrenner, 1979, paid for my schooling to go back to college, and I didn't, and I just didn't finish. It wasn't college wasn't for me. Let me put it that way. But
mhm,
George was way ahead of this whole analytics things way back then. He knew it was coming. He knew what it was going to. It's just like the whole aspect of all you see the guys with the video stuff and all that. George was doing that in
mhm.
'79. Where
Yep.
He had me doing that. He had brought me all this video equipment, and hey, just use it, and we did use it. But I mean, naturally today it's so much more complex and everything.
Right.
But I mean, so George would be, listen, he was way ahead of the pack then, and he would be right on top of it right now.
Yeah, like things like the Yes Network and those kind of
Well,
things,
that
right?
was him. That was
Right.
him. That was
Absolutely.
him.
Yeah, and I remember thinking back to even when that, became was launching and, was like the big topic of the time. I remember thinking to myself, he's a genius. He's just genius. He always is thinking at least 5, 10 years ahead of everyone else. Like
Hmm.
I loved the way he thought. Um, so now you grow up through the Yankees, you grow up experiencing, and I mean some of the most amazing names in the organization, right? Thurman Munson, Reggie Jackson. I don't know. You tell us some of the old nostalgia of those games that people look back on and they're like, my God, what an amazing time to experience baseball with some of those great names.
There's no question when you're talking about Lou Piniella, Thurman Munson, Reggie Jackson, Billy Martin. I mean, Bucky Dent. Greg Nettles. Chris Chambliss, and you think about all those moments. Like an unsung hero in that whole era was Chris Chambliss. He hit what was probably the most important home run in Yankee history.
Mm,
Because that home run got us to the first playoff, to the first World Series. Chris doesn't hit that home run, we don't go to World Series in '76, which in turn, when we lost in 4 games because we were in the World Series, now George just wants to get better. You know what I'm
right,
saying? So he
right.
signs Reggie Jackson. Okay, is this what we needed? Let's sign the big guy from Oakland. And that's what he did. So that's how important that home run was, because if you don't get to the top of the mountain, you fall off the mountain, and that's what would have happened had he not hit that home run. It's just like another guy who was so big for us, and he doesn't get the credit that he should, is a guy by the name of Sparky Lyle.
Mm,
Okay, when people ask me who is the most important, and I'm not saying the best, I didn't say the best,
right. The most
I said
important.
the most important relief pitcher during the George Steinbrenner era. And I have to say it's Sparky Lyle. Why? Because he pitched the most important game, a playoff game against Kansas City in 1977. We were out of relief pitchers. He had to pitch 4 and 2/3 innings. 4 and 2/3 innings.
Mm,
Nobody does that. No relief pitcher does that. But Billy Martin knew if we're going to get there, he's going to have to take us there. And he did. He did. Okay, which that winning that game got us to the World Series, which in turn led to Reggie Jackson hitting the 3 home runs. He
mm,
doesn't do what he did. Reggie doesn't hit the 3 home runs.
right.
There is no Mr. October.
Yeah. Wow.
You understand? So it's just so many things. Bucky Dent with his home run. How big was that home run?
Hmm.
We don't win a world championship if he doesn't hit that home run in Fenway Park.
Yeah.
You see
Yeah.
what I'm saying?
Yep.
That's how big that was. Greg Nettles, 78. He doesn't make those plays. We don't win that world championship.
Yep.
I mean, and I don't have to say anything about Thurman Munson because he was our captain, he was our leader, he was our man, he was the motor. And then I haven't even talked about Mickey Rivers and
Yeah.
what he represented. I got a quiz for you. I
What's
got a quiz for you.
what's that?
How many years did Mickey Rivers play for the Yankees? Just take a guess. Take a guess.
Uh, 5.
Is that your final
Uh,
answer?
yeah.
You don't want to change?
No.
Okay. 3 years.
Wow. That little, really?
Yeah. 3 years, 3 championships.
Wow.
3 years, 3 championships.
Feels like more, I guess,
Oh,
because
because of the quality.
yes, the quality.
He was the greatest, for me, the greatest leadoff hitter in Yankee history.
That's awesome.
Okay. I mean, he had issues which led to him being traded in '79. There were issues. There were the gambling problems. Okay, and had not been in a situation where we were losing because of circumstances, Mickey would have stayed. We would have kept Mickey, but in order to save his life, George had to trade him because of the addiction of gambling.
Yeah. Yeah. And it's stuff like that that I can imagine being in that position for George Steinbrenner, having such a large organization. I can't imagine the thousands of people that are employed by the Yankees and having to deal with the business aspect of all of this, and having that desire to win and be the best and represent not only New York but baseball as a whole. My understanding was that as soon as they would win a championship, the boss was already talking about next season,
Next day.
next day, right?
The next day he was there bright and early. Okay, boys, let's go.
I love that.
That's just the way he was.
What lessons did you learn because of that, Ray? Watching him interact and run the organization the way he did. What?
No, the biggest lesson was the aspect of having an open heart,
Hmm,
because you know um he loved Billy Martin.
hmm,
Dumb people would say, "Oh, George hated Billy." See, when they say that, that means they're ignorant and they have no clue, no idea. They didn't know. Okay,
right.
George Steinbrenner hired him and fired him 5 times. Why? Because he was always hoping to get the greatness of Billy,
Hmm.
his addiction of alcohol destroyed him. Destroyed him. But a
So
drunk
so
Bill.
at his so
I'm
at his so at his core, he never gave up on people.
No, he never. He was when Billy Martin got killed. He was a week away from being announced that he was bringing him back for the 6th time.
Wow. That's yeah.
Billy had already called all his guys. Hey, we're coming back. you know.
That's awesome. And so how much of that do you remember when you're in the midst of your work? And I know that you're an actor, you're a producer, you're an author. I know you do many speaking engagements. And so when you're out conducting your work, how much do you feel is a reflection of who that man is and the lessons that you learned because of him?
No, well, to be fair, it's I think about him, but I think about Billy. I think about
Mm,
Thurman. You know, I you know I cry a lot.
mm,
I cry a lot because I miss them so much. And they treated me like hey, Billy Martin treated me like a son. He treated me like a son. You talk about a guy who, in essence, during a period being Puerto Rican in those streets and then going into Yankee Stadium, there were people that hated me. That, I mean, they treated me really, really bad.
mm.
And
And probably more so because there was probably some jealousy going on there,
well,
right?
that's very good. See that I like you, Jesse, because you're a smart woman.
Mhm,
Okay, and you're smart because one time this guy who was a very he was important in the Yankee scheme of things, but he didn't like me.
mhm,
And so George was out of town this one time. This is during my bad boy period. George was out of town, and the guy knew it. So during batting practice, I was always having the time of my life because George used to say, hey, go, remember something. I ended up playing professional baseball, and that was all because of things I was learning on the field, and I was having the time of my life.
mm,
And so the boss was away. So this guy walked on the field during batting practice. I was in right field. I'll never forget it. And the guy walked out there grabbed me by the arm, and he said, "Don't make a scene. Don't make a scene. Just walk off with me. Don't make a scene. Just walk off with me." And so I walked off with the guy holding my arm the whole time. And you know, the embarrassment, the
Mm,
fans saw this, some of the players saw this. It was very embarrassing. He took me into the tunnel to the visitors' locker room.
mm,
And there they had all the visiting players' shoes. And then the guy says, "Shine the shoes. Your people are very good at that."
mm,
Okay.
mm,
And so here I am in tears, starting to shine these shoes. The guy was hoping that I was going to say F you and leave the ballpark. That's what he wanted me to do.
mhm,
Okay. So I started to shine the shoes, and all of a sudden, Elston Howard walked in and he started screaming at the guy. Elston Howard was the first black Yankee, and he
mm,
started screaming at the guy, "Why are you doing that? I saw what you did. I see what you're doing." And then he dragged me and took me back to the Yankee locker room. You know what I'm
mm,
saying? The guy
mm,
was screaming, "Hey, I run things here when George is not here." And Elston Howard said, "Yeah, yeah. And when George comes back, he's going to hear about this."
mm,
And he did. He told him. I was called up to the office. And while in the office, Steinbrenner asked me, why do you think this keeps on happening with you here? And I said, because that guy's prejudiced.
mhm,
And George like just looked at me, stared at me for a while, and then he says, "Let me ask you a question. Do you think that this guy might be jealous of you?"
mm,
And I said, "What, jealous? I don't have anything for him to be jealous of." And he said, "No, you're wrong. You have my friendship.
mm,
And that guy's not my friend. He just works for me.
mm.
Okay. He's my necessary evil."
Wow.
He says, but you're going to grow, as you grow up, you're going to find out that there's a very fine line between prejudice and jealousy. And he was right. And he was right. But he knew that I was really like, like I was hurt, man. I was a fallen soldier at that point because
Mm,
of what I had just lived, and I had never gone through anything like that. And he told Billy Martin about this, and
mm,
Billy Martin actually took me a couple of days later. He had me go to dinner with him, and we actually had dinner at Patsy's, the famous Italian
mhm.
restaurant, with Frank Sinatra and Sammy Davis Jr.
Wow, that is so awesome.
You know,
Oh,
and
wonderful.
that's, I mean, it took a lot of people for me not to explode because I was a walking time bomb.
Yeah, I'm sure.
Sometimes, and I'm going to be honest with you, I still feel that I'm a walking time bomb. And I'm going to tell you, had it not been all these years of the boss and Billy and certain people like Thurman telling me that I was somebody, that I was worth something, because I used to say I ain't worth crap. I'm not worth crap,
Mm,
and it took every bit of all of them
yeah.
for me to not explode.
Well, one of the things that I could say is I'm super grateful that George Steinbrenner saw that in you, and I'm super grateful that then you saw it in us, and you saw it in the hundreds of kids that we were servicing at the academy, because those kids, I'm sure through their experience with us, will now go out and make other people feel that they also are worth it. Um, and so, unfortunately, here we are again. I love our conversations, Ray. I'm sure that there's just so much more that you can share. I certainly want to have you back at some point on All Bases Covered. How can people reach you? I know that you said they can find you on all your social handles, Ray
Right.
Negron.
The best thing is Instagram, Raina Grown Yanks. Raina Grown Yanks. Go on Instagram because I handle my own Instagram. I don't have someone does my Facebook. You know what I'm
Okay.
saying? But I do my own. I check, I answer every IG that comes in. etc.
Awesome. So there you have it. You can reach Ray Negron on Instagram. Ray has written numerous books. You can absolutely find those on Ray, do the Amazon. Can people find your books on
Yes,
Amazon?
yeah, yes.
And check out Bottom of the Ninth, the last movie that Ray actually not only produced, but also was so kind to invite some of the locals from the Bronx, including my son, Anthony Melendez, who's in Bottom of the Ninth.
Or
And
check out Gravesend, a TV series with Chaz Palminteri and Armand
is that
Assante.
out already? Is that out?
That series is running right now. You can stream it. That's
Nice.
the William DeMeo television series, which is a lot of fun and a lot of great people. A lot of the guys from Goodfellas and Bronx Tale. You see them on that show. It's just a terrific show, and DeMeo is an incredible director.
Love it. All right. Well, wonderful. Ray, thank you so much for being on with us again today. This show can also be heard on Spanglish Radio Network. Please check out spanglishworld.ca for all the news and programming. Spanglish World, watch it, hear it, read it, download it, live it. Make each day amazing on purpose. And remember to always stay unbeatable. I will see you next week for another edition of All Bases Covered. Have a wonderful one. Bye-bye.